Hello, I'm Brian Trenchard-Smith. I co-wrote, directed and co-produced Stunt Rock. My interest in stunts came about to prove my physical courage to myself. And I even started doing them at school when I made my first 8mm film. So I made one when I was 15. I had to have somebody else shoot it because Vanity required that I be in it as well. So I made a film called The Duel, which was a duel between myself and another kid using the school's foils. And naturally I heroically died. And some tomato ketchup was applied to my white shirt. Then went on to make The Chase when I was, I think 17, which ran 15 minutes and had me being chased around the English countryside by an escaped lunatic with a large knife who skewered me, and then I did my first stunt, which was to fall down a rather steep incline in a quarry. It hurt. Didn't do myself permanent damage, but I thought, interesting. I think this is possibly some of the psychological underpinnings for my interest in stunts and stuntmen and how they perform these impossible acts without getting hurt. So I was an avid film fanatic, and I would look at action scenes and say, gee, how did they do that? And wow, he came off that horse rather hard, and that high fall off that building seemed an awful long way. Then as I learned more about cameras, I realized how the wide-angle lens could make the height greater, and so forth. Action! When I was a TV executive at Channel 9 in Sydney, Australia, I was also given the opportunity to make television specials in order to get me to stay on an extra year doing the station promos. So I devised, a couple of little TV specials in which it was all about movies. And so I created a stunt sequence and then showed how the stunts were done. I actually staged a bank robbery at my bank with the permission of the bank, and then had a shootout in the street and so forth. That was fun, having police there to close off traffic, and we did a jerk harness shot where someone was blown backwards by a shotgun blast onto an off-screen mattress. We did a car hitting someone who then rolled off the hood and so forth. So that was quite popular, so I thought, maybe I should make that as my first independent film. So when I left Channel 9, I made a film called The Stuntmen, which was a 50-minute TV special, which I shot in 16mm color. We were in black and white in those days, and I was able to sell it for its production cost, the princely sum of $16,000, to the local, to Channel 9, and then I was able to market it internationally, and indeed some shots of it from it are in Stunt Rock. One morning in late 1977, I was having a shower, as was my daily custom, I hasten to add, and suddenly this idea popped into my brain, and famous Australian stuntman meets famous American rock group. Much stunt and much rock takes place. The kids will tear up the seats. It's a no-brainer. How can it fail? So, got out of the shower, rapidly dried myself, sat down at the dining room table. I think I partook of some herbal supplements at that stage. It was the 70s after all. Then I started to write, and within an hour I had a 6-page treatment. It occurred to me, well, the next step is to get somebody to read it and possibly finance my idea for Stunt Rock. And so a Dutch distributor had bought Death Cheaters, my previous film, in '76, and he bought it at the Cannes Film Market. And he said, if you ever got any bright ideas, come back to me. And so I immediately mailed him this treatment and got a phone call as soon as he got it saying, come to Amsterdam, we'll make a deal. So this was now December, so my wife and I got on a plane to Amsterdam where it was freezing. Oh, freeze the balls off a brass monkey it would. So we did a deal, and the deal was simple. I understood the motivation for the deal quite simply, that this particular executive perhaps wanted to spend the Dutch winter in Beverly Hills. So he said, no, we don't want you to make the film in Australia. We want to make the film in Hollywood. So go to Hollywood. It's now December the 20th. Go to Hollywood. We'll set you up with a producer and make the film ready for delivery to Dutch theaters by June the 30th. And you'll have, you'll co-own the film and yada, yada, yada. We made the deal. So it will have to have Monique van der Ven, our favorite Dutch actress from all those wonderful Verhoeven films. She has to be one of the stars. So off you go. Simple. You got 6 months. Okay, well, I have a 6-page treatment. So I went back to Australia, shot some more footage in 35mm, which I would then integrate into the picture. For instance, we had a lot of stunts that took place at Sydney's cliff known as the Gap, or at North Head. So I quickly went there with John Seal. Nice to have an Academy Award winner shoot some stuff for you, future Academy Award winner. So I shot some genuine CinemaScope shots in various places, and a little demonstration of martial arts. The watermelon splitting and board splitting, etc. That's actually full 35. Having done that, caught a plane to Hollywood early January, and then set about preparing and writing the film. And we brought in an American writer to just give it a bit of American stuff. Then we had to find a band. I'd been promised, we'll get you Kiss, we'll get you the Eagles, we'll get you, etc. But then it turned out that, well, find a band by Monday or we shut down the picture. So I found a band that you find by Monday, and they're called Sorcery, and I went out to Van Nuys to see them, and they were great. They were very enthusiastic about their work, and of course what they had going for them was a highly visual act that was full of what I would call stunts. I mean, there's Curtis Hyde, who fires propane from his fingertips, and he could go up like a bomb at any time if the things went wrong. So I was very impressed by them and how they did their stuff. And then we brought in 2-time Grammy Award winner Jimmy Haskell to help, just to massage their music a bit. Suddenly, bingo, we had to start shooting. So 15, hilarious days running around LA, using a closed-down freeway and for one of those stunt sequences, and using Culver City Studios and so on, using a lot of people who had gone to great careers. Rene Villalobos went on to be a great cinematographer. He was like a B-unit cameraman, and a lot of IA members working out of their grade on a non-union film. We couldn't afford a SAG cast, so through Marky Fink, we got in touch with the Groundlings, and through him also, I believe, we acquired your most excellent services and Ron Rayleigh's services to play, snake oil agent and irascible film director, respectively. And through the Groundlings, of course, that's how we got Phil Hartman to play the first AD on the TV series that Grant is working on. So that is his first film part, and in a career that was great and sadly cut short. So 15 fast and furious days of shooting, and prior to which I had started editing a lot of the multi-panel sequences and getting them done. And then just to make the delivery date, 3 weeks after the end of shooting, we had to go into the mix. So normally, director gets 4 weeks to cut a film under DGA rules, not that it was DGA, and then it goes into the tracking process where all the sound effects and looping and everything else is done. We had to do all of that in 3 weeks and go into the Sawyer building at the studio and Todd AO sound and mix the film, which we did in I think we managed to do that in 9 days, and then out came the perfectly crafted sausage, the other end, but it was kind of a spicy sausage, really. People didn't quite know what to make of it. It was largely plotless, and because I had this parallel career in Australia from the, really in England from the late 60s and in Australia, from the early 70s, of making trailers for movies. And I used to like trailers; they were fun. And I thought, what would happen if I made a 90-minute trailer? So Stunt Rock is really a 90-minute trailer that is a professional love letter to stuntmen in general, and the amazing effects that they achieve with their skill and their daring, and a love letter to Grant Page, who is a stunt master and is still, at nearly 70 years of age, still doing stunts. I was with him when he did a full burn earlier this year outside the Australian Film Institute in Melbourne, coming up to Geoffrey Rush, who's one of Australia's Academy Award winners, and shaking his hand while fully on fire. So Grant is, there is no one like him in the world, and I regard him as skilled and as extraordinary as, let's say, Yakima Canutt, who did the famous stagecoach stunt going under the horses and back up onto the wagon, and Hal Needham. Hal Needham, is a pretty amazing Hollywood stunt king, and Hal actually visited us, and we spent a little bit of time together. So that was really the genesis and the sort of Reader's Digest version of the production of Stunt Rock. Sorcery's concert scenes were shot, in fact, in the Culver City studios, masquerading as the Forum, or I actually forget what we said they were. I think we said they were in the Forum, and so we brought in a bunch of high school students, offering them a free concert at the studio, and they became our audience. Though, of course, Murphy's Law being what it was, it was the one time all the pyrotechnic effects in the Magic Act were going wrong. And what we wanted to do was, on that night, integrate the band with the audience, so shooting largely from behind, and then on subsequent days we would turn around without an audience and shoot all the foreground, all the actors in a frontal manner. It was kind of an alarming night, because things just didn't work, and the audience were getting restive and impatient, and some of them were leaving, and we had to editorially be very selective about our shots, which would show sort of empty patches of the audience. But there was brilliant concert lighting done. I think Marty dug up those people, and we really had a stellar job done on the presentation of the concert. It does look like it's a real concert in a real venue, which it was not. We we had the specific songs all chosen that they would be performing in the movie, and some of those songs were, a couple in the recording studio, and the rest were in this fake concert venue. So, it was. I had actually shot at live concerts once before when I was working for Channel 9 in Australia. I made a TV special called Rock Set Free, in which Deep Purple, Manfred Mann, and Free were all performing. And actually, I was a pretty bad interviewer as well of the bands between the sequences that we shot. I think Manfred Mann actually said to me, "Do you need a little bit of help with your questions?" I said, "Yes, please, tell me what I should be asking you." So for all my interest in rock and roll, I wasn't actually that knowledgeable. But when you're on a 15-day schedule, you're just trying to get it shot. I couldn't do any of the things that I did with Deep Purple when I put a fisheye lens on my Bill and Howell and was going up and down the lead singer's leg in the concert. He practically wanted to kick me off the stage, actually. But so in those cute shots, we didn't get as many of those cute shots as I would have liked. But hell, the band, they were certainly interesting to watch. We thought, wow, wouldn't it be great to have, integrate Grant with those kind of stunts. But the only kind of stunts I could get was, the stock footage that I had myself and some that I was able to buy here from Gone in 60 Seconds, the first one, and Speed Trap, which had also been made by the same, the same producers, and they licensed the footage to us. Hal was, a great. He certainly helped, push the, raise the bar of stunt work higher.
Washington. LA!
Gentlemen, Grant Page, cousin, stuntman, horrible actor, but hell of a nice guy.
I then made four 1-hour TV specials featuring Grant Page, who I had engaged to do some rappelling off a cliff in Sydney for the stuntmen, and I thought, this guy is amazing. He is an extraordinarily, gifted athlete and stunt scientist. It's a new religion, so I put him under a 5-year contract of management. So I became a manager, and I managed his career as well as making my own films, which had typical synergy, because I could then put him in my own films. So my deal with him was to have his name above the title of a movie within 5 years. So he wouldn't be just someone hitting the dirt for pay behind, and making an actor look good. He would be doing his own stunts, sort of in an Errol Flynn, Douglas Fairbanks kind of a way. So I would start to create vehicles for him, and I made Kung Fu Killers, which was about who will succeed Bruce Lee now that Bruce Lee is sadly passed. And Grant goes to Hong Kong to find out who the next martial arts sensation is. And among the list of up-and-coming Hong Kong actors was Jackie Chan, but I was told, no, he's not going to go anywhere. The guy you should be making this, the guy you should be singling out is Carter Wong, who was very good, but he didn't travel particularly well to the West, and you will see him in Big Trouble in Little China, in which he does a tremendous job. But Jackie, I digress, I know, but Jackie was amazing because he had a couple of false starts, including The Big Brawl, which was to be his entry into Hollywood, but he just kept on going, and finally he cracked it, and has become the international superstar outside of Asia that he is. Anyway, it was a pity he wasn't in Kung Fu Killers, but so that was my first film with Grant, and I put him in other things that I was doing, and then I made 4 one-hour television specials about him called Danger Freaks, footage from which I also use in Stunt Rock in multiple panel sequences. The Man from Hong Kong, which I made Grant the assassin in that, and there's a terrific street chase and fight in a kitchen in a restaurant in which we use every unpleasant tool of the culinary trade That was my ambition anyway. Let's get the hooks, the boiling water, and the frying. Hit the guy with the frying pan. What else can we do? And so on. So that that was a first time that Grant really got seen all over the world. Then I made Death Cheaters, which was really about 3 years, after I'd put him under contract, and that was his first big starring role. He did star in Kung Fu Killers, but that was just for television. The split screens came from my enjoyment of Woodstock and Mad Dogs and Englishmen with Joe Cocker, as I said earlier. And the slow motion is, it's a wonderful tool to use when you have some highly kinetic action to put on the screen, and it can be over in a flash, or you can see every chunk of glass coming out of the windshield when Grant smashes through on fire. And slow motion can also prolong the time that he spends on fire. And you think, my God, put him out, put him out! Yeah, actually, that's something happened to me on a talk show in America. I was promoting Man from Hong Kong, and Grant and I would tag team. He would set me on fire one time, and I'd set him on fire another time. But one talk show host utterly freaked when I was set on fire, and he practically started running around with his, like a chicken with his head cut off. Put him out! Put him out! Put him out! He really thought that, because I wasn't even saying, I wasn't acting or anything. I was just zen calm. It's warm. I'm used to it. It's fine. But he was freaking. But slow motion is great for prolonging things, that's why I use it. So to me, that is artistic.
How can I be so blind? This is something unique you guys are doing. I think it's going to catch on. It already has. It's called rock and roll, right? Not this combination. There's music, there's magic, and stunts. I'm going to write an article. Let's call it Stunt Rock.
Stunned disbelief. I think, you see, it's something that promises well in promo, and then you've got a 90-minute promo instead of, people were expecting more plot and, character arc and, various things that really were not in my planning. This was a celebration of stuntmen and musicians who do incredibly dangerous things to enhance their act. A lot of my films both celebrate and satirize the genre tropes of standard movie fare, and we were able to get a number of sort of in-gags about the industry. We had Beretta's stunt double of Robert Blake, whom I think has been in the headlines a little recently, and he is a very good match for Beretta. And so in the party sequence, there he is, throwing a cigarette away and just doing the Beretta thing. It was my first time in Los Angeles shooting, and I thought, there were certain things that appealed to me that I would like to shoot, and so we did. But people who were expecting a more dramatic film were disappointed and puzzled. Other people, thought that it was just overkill. The audience that I thought would really dig it has, in a strange way, now arrived 30 years later, because the film has taken on a time capsule quality and a portrait of the late 70s, the attitudes and style of rock bands of that day. I think an English reviewer referred to it as glitter rock. I never thought of it as glitter rock, really. I saw Sorcery as kind of Kiss-like, a Kiss-like band without the makeup, but with the intriguing idea of introducing the magic into the rock and roll. I thought that I thought they were quite funny. and I think the humor has, has been enhanced with the passage of time.
I had a couple of bad experiences hang gliding when I pushed my luck just a little too far. When you fly for movies, inevitably you have to take a few risks. The first time I hit a tree, which wasn't too bad. But when I crash landed in a river, I was very nearly drowned.
I nearly got squashed by a car on Danger Freaks because I would occasionally operate the spare camera, which was a clockwork wind, 16mm Bell & Howell, 10mm fixed focus lens. So we were shooting a T-bone stunt where one car would broadside another, and I got behind the car that was the target. Because the idea was that it would slide and turn up, and flip on its side and then fall back down, and I would be protected behind the barrier of this car. Well, it just flipped a little bit higher than they thought, and I wasn't really aware of it because I was sort of looking through the viewfinder, and it kind of had that point of no return thing where was it going to come down that way or was it going to come down that way? And luckily it came down that way, because if it had come down onto me, I would have certainly had a bit of a, I would have had a headache, to say the least. Another occasion, Grant Page, brilliant hang glider pilot, I was shooting him landing in Tahiti, and again, the wide-angle lens is very deceptive as to distance, and so I thought I was in the right place, and he came in to land, and one of the wires that from the A-frame to the wings, I felt it just touch my my hair. I had more hair in those days, and just if it had gone there or there, I would not have had a very pleasant afternoon. But that's about me, which, forgive me, vanity. On Man from Hong Kong, obviously, we did burn George Lazenby's hand slightly in the fire when he catches fire during his final fight scene, and he was off the set for 4 days, but returned. And that story is told in Not Quite Hollywood, which I urge everyone to buy a copy, because it's not just because it's kind to me, but it's a really fascinating, fun film. I mean, it has 6,000 cuts in 100 minutes. Can you imagine that? It is a rockumentary, not a documentary. You'll have an amazing ride. Anyway, that story is told then. Stuntman on Man from Hong Kong, who I didn't realize was deaf, did not hear a motorbike sliding towards him because his back was turned, and it pinned him against a car and broke his ankles. And another actor, the late John Hargraves, was blasted by an explosion that went off too close to him in Death Cheaters, and it blasted dirt into his face and some grains of sand into his eye, and an eye surgeon had to pick them out. He was recovered enough to rejoin the shoot 9 days later, and I swapped the roles around of what they did so I could keep shooting without him. But those accidents I regret, and they are the product of, let's say, decision-making by assumptions. And the 11th commandment, thou shalt not assume. And if you break the 11th commandment, you end up breaking the 12th, thou shalt not get caught. And on those occasions, we were caught by not being able to fully predict what could go wrong. And that's part of a stuntman's expertise, is that he looks at all the variables in the event that he is participating in, and thinks, well, I know it's meant to slide to there, but what happens if it slides to here? Should we put down a railway sleeper that can't be seen just to stop it sliding? You get the picture. So the skill of these guys is not, they're not just sort of capriciously throwing themselves onto the bayonets of fate, let's say, but they are working out how not to get hurt. The idea is not to get hurt, to make it look dangerous, but not to have it be dangerous. I'd made a lot of genre films in Australia, and I was encouraged to come to Hollywood to make genre films here, but because I'm very good at making, a film on, as I said, a budget, like the smell of an oily rag, if you're good at something, delivering something cheap, they don't want to see what you can do with a little bit more money. So I've made a lot of really low-budget genre films in Hollywood and not actually grab it. I haven't been able to gravitate to the higher budget movies that I had hoped to do. I mean, I make epics on a shoestring in every genre known to man, and a couple I've invented. I would love to take one of these bloated, $70, $80 million movies and show how you can just about achieve the same effect for $40 million. Of course, there is the factor of the stars' salaries, and they've just grown higher and higher and higher. And we can debate the business sense of that or the entitlements. But I guess if you're a big star and you can open a picture, you can demand a very high salary. But films have become too expensive, and my films have become too cheap. So I want I want a bit more money. I don't want a huge amount. I just want a bit more money so I can make sure that the audience doesn't get cheated. Cheating the end user is something that's going on a lot in the low budget area, and I don't approve of that. So I like to give value for money on the understanding, well, sure, this is a $2 million movie or it's a $3 million movie, but you're going to get an entertaining hour and a half out of watching it on DVD or on cable or whatever. And maybe you'll find a sort of quirky sense of humor that you don't get in your average Hollywood movie, which comes from my skewed, possibly, Australian perspective. Maybe you'll dig it, maybe you'll not notice it. That's why I think films like Stunt Rock, Siege of Firebase Gloria, Night of the Demons 2, the Leprechaun movies, it's why they have now sort of achieved a certain permanent audience, a longevity that possibly their financiers never dreamed about when they were first mooted.
Hi, I'm Marky Fink. I was the line producer of the film. I had just come back to Los Angeles after 3 years out of the city on other projects, and the Dutch company that was financing the film shared a lawyer with me. And they had asked that lawyer, who can we get to watch this for us? And I was unpacking, and I was, the next day, the producer of Stunt Rock. I did Cornbread Earl and Me. We had a delay on Cuckoo's Nest. When we decided to go with Jack Nicholson as opposed to a fellow named Burt Reynolds, we had to wait 6 months because Jack was busy. So that summer I took off from the prep on One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and did Cornbread Earl and Me. It was done here in Los Angeles in 1975. Well, I'd had experience with non-American directors. In fact, at that stage of the game, more experience with non-American directors, because I only recently come to Hollywood in the '60s, started in Europe. So, and of course, I'd had Milos Forman, and for some period of time before that. So the foreignness of it didn't make any difference. But Brian is a terrific goer, and you don't see that a lot in American films, and you also don't see in lower budget American films, which is a really terrible model for young directors, for starters, for wannabes, to have someone with Brian's skills dealing in a limited budget, limited schedule situation was just great for me. And I have missed that every day since, when I've worked on projects with younger, less experienced directors with the same constraints of budget and schedule, but without the skills and the experience to work their way through it. Well, most of the stunts were already in the can. The ones that we did still the ones that were shot live for the film still get my stomach going. And I've watched the film a couple of times in the last couple of days, and I wake up in the middle of the night sometimes thinking of Grand Page hanging from that rope down the street at Hollywood and La Brea. You know, why a princess phone? I'll never understand, but you know, I guess that decision was above my pay grade. I just think it's terrific. In later years, I've gotten involved in the business side of managing libraries and sort of leftover films, and I've become aware that film has become a disposable commodity. It is not the film that Brian, you know, we grew up in an era where good films were precious. You know, to some degree we were kidding ourselves because we were seeing 6 great Japanese films every year. The Japanese were seeing 150 really lousy Japanese films every year. We never got those. But there was some sense that the films would last, they'd be around a long time. And you know, now at the rate at which they're made and the quality at which they're made, they have no value beyond their initial. And to see a film like Stunt Rock, you know, be pertinent, and it is pertinent. I mean, even the rock and roll trope is like almost up to date. 30 years ago, I think it's just a great achievement for Brian and the other people involved in the film.
My name's Dick Blackburn, Richard Blackburn, Richard Comstock Blackburn, depending on the credit that you may see in different media. And I played the agent, Peter, I don't remember his last name, in Stunt Rock.
These guys don't last long. A lot of them get smashed, cut, bruised, crushed. They lose a leg. They lose their nerve.
By the time of Stunt Rock in, I guess it was 77, 78, L'Amour was done in 73. It had sank without a trace into the vast sea of cinema. And what happened was I had another classmate at UCLA named Ron Rayleigh, who was cast in the movie as the director, and I think he happened to mention me as a choice to play the agent.
Look, there's no way I'm going to have her fire a flare gun. She can get a very valuable burn.
I want her to fire the flare herself.
But she happens to be a very valuable property, okay?
Look, guy, I'm the dog, you're the tail. I wag you. She's firing the flare.
Okay. She's firing the flare.
There's another classmate at UCLA who since has become a big agent. His name is now John Patak. In those days, he was Jack. But he had a particular way of speaking that I used to mimic. But then again, I am a mimic, so I mimicked everybody at UCLA. But for some reason, when I got this phone call, the phone call said, "Yeah, we hear that you're very adept at imitating an agent." And John Patak was very atypical of agents in any way. So it was just a total fluke that I was cast in this film. I came down and read it, and they said, fine, go ahead.
Hey, they're ready for you, sweetheart.
Okay.
How you doing? Don't want me to. Listen, I fixed it so you can shoot the flare yourself.
Great.
The shooting schedule, as I recall, was very, you know, I just had a couple of scenes. So I was basically on there going like that at sometimes, you know, and then cut away to the stunt, which I didn't see, because that had already been shot, or was to be shot, in most cases.
It felt good when you were doing it, but it doesn't feel good now, does it? All right.
And I did an interview with Grant Page for We Magazine at the same time, and you know, I found him I liked him anyway. I mean, he's an extremely likable person, and then a very knowledgeable person, and I thought it would be a good interview to tell people in print what stuntmen go through, and you know, how they think, and how it's differing at that time than it was in the early days when people were just flying by the seat of their pants.
Doesn't anybody care if they get hurt?
No, not really. Stuntmen are breakables.
People had come up to me in the last, I'd say, 5 years about the film, which shocked me because I had basically forgotten all about it. I was up in Vancouver at a film festival because they were showing a movie I did called L'Amour, which is a horror movie. And somebody came up and said, aren't you in Stunt Rock? Wow. And I said, you mean, is that available? And they said, yeah. And I think that time it was on, you know, a video. And then again, I was once at home and I got a call from a friend of mine who said, I'm watching this movie and you're in it. And it turned out to be Stunt Rock, and I didn't even know this was being screened, you know. So, yeah, that's, and now here I am speaking about it. So it's great. It's funny. I went to New York, and I worked in New York for a film company, and I was a grip, and I did all these, you know, things that you're supposed to do before you get a shot. And then I went back to California, and I connected with an old friend of mine from UCLA Film School days. And at that point, there was a popular series called Count Yorga. And we thought we might be able to make a vampire film that would be inexpensive like Count Yorga, and also interest backers because the Count Yorga films had made money. So we did a movie called Lemora, A Child's Tale of the Supernatural. And that is a story unto itself, but that's how I got into movies. I just did one called Miss Medusa. It was like, it was another nightmare in some other nightmares I've had in shooting things. But in this one, I had a very, very good actress cast in the lead part, and that was Beverly D'Angelo. And what happened was she was doing a movie of the week in New York, and it was May, and it snowed. And it delayed them. Snowed in May in New York. Delayed them. I had to scramble to get somebody in like 24 hours, which I did, who was very good, actually. But the other thing I can remember is George Romero coming on the set and wanting to put in, we had a subway set, basically, as one of the sets. That's why I wanted to do it in New York instead of California. And he wanted to put a poster for his film on the subway set. And I said, George, you know, I'm trying to get the story across. I don't want people looking at, you know, I'm sure you have enough publicity for your film. All right, that's fine. that was my memory of that.
Meet Perry, Smirky, Paul, Greg, Doug, Curtis, and Richie.
How are you?
Better known to the FBI as Sorcery.
Oh, wow!
It was about 1975, and I was playing in a band called Legs Diamond, and I had wanted to do something much more theatrical. I grew up in Rome, Italy, and when I was a boy, they had video jukeboxes. So when you would go to a little place to, you know, get a Coke or whatever, you could put a couple of lire into a box, and it would play Elvis Presley or whoever a little video, like a little TV screen, much like they used to have a drive-ins, you know, a jukebox, but this was a video jukebox. Very interesting concept. So over the years, as I began to play music, I wanted to do something theatrical. I always thought that people were being let down in terms of the theatrical portion of a rock band performance. It was the guitar player plays, the bass player plays, the singer sings, but there was really nothing visually to impact them. So I thought about the most elaborate thing, the most entertaining thing that I enjoyed was magic. And I thought, well, if we combine the two things together, a magic show, a good rock band, it would be for the eyes and for the ears. So I came up with a concept, but I didn't really have a direction yet. And I left the band I was in, and I was going to a place in Los Angeles called the Musicians Contact Service, which is looking for musicians just to sort of organize and put the thing together. And I ran into a singer that I'd known from the past, I'd worked with before. His name was Greg. You might recognize him from Stunt Rock. And we asked each other what we were up to, and I told him what I wanted to do, and he said he knew a magician. So it was sort of like, okay, well, let's go talk to him. So it was actually 3 guys. It was more than I had expected. They had one elaborate trick. It wasn't even an illusion yet, it was just a trick. And it's the sword penetration that is in the song Sacrifice. But it wasn't at all like that. It was just, the sword came up and he got off the sword, and there was nothing theatrical about it. It was a good illusion, but there was nothing theatrical about it. So we talked, and over the months we put together the concept of joining forces. We found other musicians, pardon me. So now we had 3 magicians and several musicians working together, and we never played a performance with that lineup. We only had two illusions, and the sword penetration, and then one where in Stunt Rock, where the devil goes into the lit cage and comes down over him, and then it goes up and blows up, and he's gone. We had those two, but that's all. And we didn't play any performances yet, and the band was really not cohesive. It didn't sound right. So we looked around, went back to the Musicians Contact Service, and found Rick, the bass player, Richie King. And he joined the band. We did our first performance with him and the other drummer, Fritz. And that was the performance where Paul walked out with a flaming staff, and he walked by Richie and lit his hair on fire. And it really happened like that. It was just so innocent and spontaneous. And I looked over, and he had the big hair. It was on fire. He didn't know yet. So I ran over, put him out. He thinks, what am I doing, whacking him on the head? And it was kind of funny because the hair was falling down over him, and he's like, what's going on? But we kept playing, and this performance ended. It was probably for about 18 people. I'm glad no one really saw us. But that drummer we had, Fritz, was not really working out. But we got performances around town. We started playing, started getting a name built up for ourselves. And that's when we decided we really wanted to upgrade the band. And the one person we needed was a much better drummer. And Rick's brother had been on the road, Perry Morris, had been on the road. He came back into town. He and Curtis, who ended up playing Prince of Darkness later on, he and Curtis came to see us. And they enjoyed the band, and we asked him if he would play with us. So he came in. We did one rehearsal with him. He played with us that night, and he played with us from then on. It was great. And the band that was the band. It was Greg, Richie, Perry, and myself. And it grew from that. And then, of course, as we added illusions, sometimes I'd write a song, and an illusion would grow from the idea, like Burned Alive, for instance. The illusion was grown from the idea of the song. And other illusions we did, the illusion kind of came first, and I'd write a song that would fit the dynamic of the illusion. And in fact, the first song I wrote for Sorcery was The Wizard's Council. And believe it or not, I just kind of closed my eyes and I thought, what would I hear? What would I hear in my own head if I was being run through with a sword? And that was the melody that I heard. And maybe that makes me kind of strange, because most people would be screaming. I'm thinking about music. But that was the first Sorcery song of The Wizard's Council. And that's what gave me the idea for the theatrical show. That was where The Wizard's Council was actually born. And that was the moment in time when the show was actually becoming cohesive. Because now we had The Wizard's Council, which was the band, and the magician. And as we added people, road crew became the Demon Army. And they were the guys that, did the Prince of Darkness beckoning in Stunt Rock. You saw them, lifting people and moving people and shoving people and grabbing people. Those were our roadies. And they loved being on stage, but they wanted to wear hoods, no one could see them. But that was the genesis, if you will. The beginning was just an idea I had, and it grew to what happened at Stunt Rock. Drummer Perry had played with Ricky Nelson, and Ricky's, I suppose, cousin, I think that's how the relationship went, was Willie Nelson, not the country singer Willie Nelson, but Willie Nelson, he was Ozzie Nelson's cousin for sure. He knew him from that experience. And Willie knew Marky Fink, who was the producer of Stunt Rock. And Willie came to Perry and said, I have a producer who's looking for a rock band. I know you're playing around town with Sorcery. Would you be interested in that? And that's how we hooked up with Brian through Marty, and that's how we were introduced to that opportunity. I can remember when we first met Brian. We met with him at the band hangout. That was Richie and Perry's house in the valley. And Brian came over. He brought the script. We all read through it, we looked at it, and then we had a second meeting as I recall, and everybody was kind of jockeying for position, trying to get more screen time because we were all budding egomaniacs, and he was really focused on the movie. He was really focused on what was best for the movie in general, and kept us all in line and gave us each enough to do to keep us busy, and gave us enough screen time where we were all satisfied. And I think he made it a very cohesive interaction between the band and the other cast members, because they were all professional actors and we weren't, and they made us look good. We tried to drive Brian insane. He was a good man, though. He put up with us. We were a wild rock band. By some standards, perhaps not so wild, but we were wild enough. And we had a good time making the movie. We had a good time working with Brian. He was very forgiving, and he understood that we hadn't done this before, and he gave us enough artistic freedom to be ourselves in the movie and just have a good time. And in fact, the whole shoot was just one big good time. Not a party as much, but we had a good time. Everything was enjoyable. The cast and crew were fantastic. I can't think of a negative memory.
Woman! Woman! Take me away!
Stunt Rock was filmed in a couple of months, the American portion. Brian and Grant had worked on Danger Freaks in Australia before, so there was some footage that was put into Stunt Rock that had already been completed. But all of the Los Angeles work was done at one time. My recollection, it was less than 3 months, but that included also recording the soundtrack. So there were many nights where we would go into the recording studio at Burbank Studios at Warner Brothers and record, and then go get a couple of hours sleep and be on the set at sunup the next morning. So it was a grind sometimes. It was still fun, but it was work. Make no mistake about it. It was all business. No one was doing drugs. No one was drinking. I mean, we had a good time, but it was definitely work.
Okay, cousin. The rope is now attached to the building.
All right.
The body rope around you has a breaking strain of over 2 tons. The carabiner has a breaking strain of 4,000 pounds. The rope clips in through the top like this and forms one loop around the back. That's done up. And now you're attached to the building. You're set.
Hey, Grand, that sounds real easy. I'm not afraid to do that.
Fear's a funny thing, Monique. If ever you lose respect for the danger of what we're doing, you can finish up very dead.
One of the things I do remember about that experience, you had asked me earlier about torturing Brian, and there's another thing that just came to mind. At the very end of the movie, Monique is up on the roof of the hotel, and the band's up there with her, and she goes down the rope, and Grant catches her, and that's sort of the climax of the movie at the end of it, where she does that trick, and she was a very brave woman, very good looking too, but very brave. That was quite a stunt for her to do, because that was a real hotel, and she really did that. But the band decided we would torture Brian some more. So what we did, we were up on the roof when she was going down, and they had a film, an angle where they shot her. So we got in the window behind where the camera was. So when they shot her, we were standing in the window. Then when she landed, we made sure that the camera was pointing that way. We got behind the action and got over about a half a block away. We were standing over there. Then they turned the camera around and shot Grant, and we were then over on the other side of the street behind Grant. I don't know how Brian did it, but he caught us, and he was able to somehow not get us in the scene, but it was great editing, so congratulations, Brian.
Gentlemen, Grant Page, cousin, stuntman, horrible actor, but hell of a nice guy.
Grant Page was a gentleman. He was a very talented person. He was a good actor. He was very genuine. We had a nice time with him. He was a great stuntman. You know, he was in all those, the stunt coordinator for all the Mad Max movies and many more in Australia. Very, very talented person, and just as genuine as he was in the movie. He was just playing himself, just a down-to-earth kind of guy who was basically able to do things that other people would be unable to do because, first of all, they'd be petrified with fear. And Brian told me that about a year and a half ago, Grant fell out of an airplane, and he actually survived. And he's older than I am. So I don't know what he did to fly himself into a tree or onto something soft, but he actually survived falling out of the airplane.
Do you have a problem?
I'm being chopped to pieces, Peter. Yeah. Every time there's any action going on, this guy in drag does it for me. There's no continuity to the character.
Look, sweetheart, we're building an image here. Now, the producers are just going to have to realize what a very valuable little property you are.
How valuable can I be if an audience doesn't believe me, huh?
Monique Van de Ven, she was absolutely drop-dead gorgeous. She was a big star in Holland. And one of the regrets the band always had was that we were unable to tour in Europe. When the movie was released in Holland, they had something called Stunt Rock Week. It was such a big premiere. She was a huge star there, and Herman Elmer, the executive producer, was Dutch. So when the movie came out in Holland, it was really something. We did have one gold record in Belgium. I think that was, believe it or not, the Wizards Council. And that's kind of a pretty heavy metal song, I would say, to get to #1 in a country.
I got an act for you. What? You talking to me? Yes. I'm Chris Shalin. For $1 million, I'll allow myself to be buried alive under 25 feet of rock and cement. Great. Check these chains. Tight, aren't they? Yeah, they're tight. Well, now watch this.
There's a scene towards the end of the movie where we're at a party. Now, that wasn't one of our homes. That was a home we obviously rented to shoot for the movie. And we got there about sunup. And we had been filming pretty late the previous night, so none of us had gotten much sleep, and we didn't have breakfast. So we walked in, and we were told we were going to do a party scene. So the prop man, Max, had put out a big spread of party food, because you can't have a party without a bunch of entrees. So they set it all up, and they went away to do something else, and we're all looking at each other going, "Give me one of those." So we started, 1 leads to 2, leads to 4, leads to 8. Pretty soon, we were all gone. The band had eaten everything. So they go to do the shoot, they come in, Brian goes, "Where's the food?" And somebody goes, "The band ate it." So they sent Max out, he got more food, and Brian goes, "Please, don't eat the prop food." And one little sidebar on that party scene. When Chris Shalin is thrown into the pool, it was February. The pool water was probably 50 degrees, and I can't believe he was able to actually do what he did, getting out of the chains in that kind of frigid temperature. So good for you, Chris.
Since the days of Merlin the magician, the power of good has challenged the forces of evil. Prepare yourselves for a night of cosmic combat. A duel to the death to decide the fate of mankind. The king of the wizards against the prince of darkness. Ladies and gentlemen, Sorcery.
In Stunt Rock, believe it or not, that whole performance you see is just one take. They had many cameras, they had a lot of angles, but we just did each illusion one time. We were very polished. It wasn't like take 2, take 3, take 4. It was, we did our show, they filmed it, and that's what you saw is what you got. And there were a lot of things going on that you really missed in the movie. There was action everywhere. It was like a 3-ring circus, we used to call ourselves. I'm over here on this side, Greg and Richie and Perry are over on this side, and Curtis and Paul are in the middle, and we did, everything was going on. We were always running around like crazy. And one of the things we did was throw fireballs. And what that is a piece of flash paper with gunpowder poured into it. We wind it up, make a little fuse, and most of the time we just light it off of Paul's staff or Curtis's pitchfork. Well, Greg lit one off, threw it towards the audience, and it just landed on this lady's shoulder and blew up. She was a big fan. It worked out okay. We bought her a new shirt. We got her a nice hairdo, and she was great. She was good to go.
There it goes. She does like it. See? I knew she'd eat this stuff. Here, we'll get some more.
Oh,
hey,
go
Face.
for it. Yeah.
Sorry, Face. You're a grotty eater. You're a grotty eater.
Here, have a little water.
Watch out for your greens there, Face. You know, they're good for you.
There you
go.
go.
I know what we'll do. We're going to give her the whole...
The premiere was at the Academy Award Theater in Hollywood. It was just for cast and crew. We were able to invite our friends and family, and it was a wonderful experience to have just that camaraderie. Like I said, the folks who did the movie were all so nice, and we really had a good time working with them, and it was great to have that film on the big screen in front of us there at the Academy Award Theater, and all sit together and enjoy all of our combined efforts. You know, as the credits ran, you know, I knew everyone. You know, I knew every person who'd been involved in the movie, and you know, they were all there, and everyone was just thrilled because we really enjoyed making it, and quite frankly, we all liked the movie. Well, as I said, we were in the Academy Award Theater. Kind of tough not to get involved in that Hollywood mystique. I mean, there you are, where every screen legend in the world has been, and you see your face 50 feet tall, and in my case, about 50 feet wide, but it's hard not to be overly impressed with yourself, and then of course with the movie. Looking back on it, was it Gone with the Wind? Probably not. Was it Star Wars? No, it was not. It wasn't intended to be that either. But it's a fun movie, and I think that most people who enjoy that kind of movie kind of get into it from that respect. They appreciate the talent that Grant had doing his real-life stunts. They appreciate the talent that we had as Sorcery doing what we did. And Brian put it all together. And did it have a screenplay that's going to ever win an Oscar? Absolutely not. But I've watched it so many times I can't tell you how many over the years, and I enjoy it every single time. Actually, I just saw the first time I've seen Stunt Rock in widescreen since the premiere in 1978, and it's fun to see the whole thing wide again, because the copies we've all had have been VHS copies, which was released some years ago on VHS, but of course it's 3x4 format. So the band is pretty much cut out of all the scenes because we're over here and the box is right here, and on the widescreen we're back, and it was great. And I saw just a glimpse of it before I came over here to have this interview, and it was nice to see the band again and the hair. Led Zeppelin in Greg's vocal approach. He really liked Robert Plant. You can hear a lot of Deep Purple in my approach to playing guitar and also my songwriting. And another not so well-known band called Captain Beyond was a great influence. Coincidentally, Perry and Richie and I all enjoyed Deep Purple, but we loved Captain Beyond. And that was where some of the unusual timing, there's a section in Sacrifice, for instance, that goes into a 13/7. It's very difficult. I don't think another drummer in the world besides Perry could actually even play that. Really astonishing drumming in that song. But we did a lot of music where we played in 7, we played in 5, we played in 6, and unfortunately, some of that music never got onto a record. But I still have copies of it in my home, and I listen to the stuff. It stands out till today. Believe it or not, Kiss did not influence us at all. I like Kiss. I think they have a wonderful stage show. They seem like really good people, but no influences at all. Sorry to say. Sorry, Gene. Our first performance with Curtis, we played at the Whiskey, which is still a very well-known nightclub on the Hollywood Strip, or on Sunset Strip, excuse me. And we were playing on that stage. We really just filled everything in. I mean, we were a big band, and some of these stages we just had to crowd onto. And so, believe it or not, there's a pole in the middle of the whiskey stage. And it's kind of far back, but it's there. And when Curtis first appeared on stage, the first moment he appeared with Sorcery, there was a flash, and he appears, and then he walks to the front of the stage and, you know, introduced himself to the crowd, so to speak. Well, the flash went off, Curtis walked 2 feet, smacked right into the pole. It was so loud we could hear it over the music. He's standing there, you know, stunned, but he was a real trooper, and he kind of pulled himself together, and we went on. That had to be my favorite moment. I don't know if you know this or not, but Curtis passed away many years ago. And I'm going to look right in the camera. Kids, don't do drugs. Curtis died of a drug overdose, and so there is no more Sorcery. However, the band, Perry and Richie and I are all still very good friends. And Perry and I actually jammed together in June of this year. Just the two of us. I haven't jammed with Richie in years, but we're good friends, and we hope someday we could get back together. But I'll tell you one thing that happened to me, which was more or less the high point of my musical career. One of my sons plays drums, and one of my sons plays guitar. And we actually jammed the other day, and we played some Sorcery music. So that was really the high point of my musical career. In terms of our other performances, after that event, when Curtis passed away, we actually changed directions. We got a new singer. His name was David Isley. He played with Jafria, he played with Dirty White Boy, and we did a lot more with him, in fact, than we did before. We did 2 Dick Clark television specials, and headlined, I suppose, both of them, and did the background music for them. And it was a great experience. I think working with Dick Clark was really, it was an amazing thing. He's such a nice person. I mean, he comes across as a nice guy on film and on camera, and he looks genuine, and he actually is. And being able to walk into Dick Clark Productions and knock on his door, and he'll look, hello, who is it? And open the door, and he says, "Come on in, Smokey." I mean, that made my career. When Dick Clark knew who I was, because everybody knows who Dick Clark is. And then we did another movie called Rocktober Blood, and that was with a third singer. His name is Nigel Benjamin. He played in a British band called Mott, which was an offshoot of Mott the Hoople. And that was actually a fun band. Now, in the movie, we were called Head Mistress, but that was still Sorcery. No one in Europe, Asia, or Australia had ever heard of us before the movie. And we had absolutely no fan base out of America until the movie. Now, even to this day, and this is almost 2009, even until this day, we still have a fan base worldwide. People still visit our website. We still have people writing emails and looking for information on the band. So without question, the movie gave us that international exposure that we never would have had without it. However, our largest single performance was on our last Dick Clark show, and it was the last time we played as a band professionally, and we were seen by 40 million people, and I think that's a pretty good swan song. Now, I had mentioned earlier that we actually have a website. It's sorcerymusic.com, and you can find out much more information about the band on our website. You can contact us. You can ask us questions. We have a guest book, and we're always wanting to hear from our fans worldwide.